Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The RCMP is investigating alleged secret police stations in Quebec. The Alberta government announced it will be matching Albertans' donations to relief efforts in both Syria and Turkey up to $1 million. And we hear from the president of the Waterton Chamber, who talks about the cool experience of seeing a scene from the TV series The Last of Us being shot at his hotel.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The RCMP is investigating 2 alleged secret police stations in Quebec operated by Chinese authorities. Police say its integrated national security team has opened investigations into the suspected stations located in Montreal and its suburb of Brossard. Officials say Mounties are carrying out actions aimed at detecting and disrupting what they say are foreign state criminal activities. The RCMP said that Canadians of Chinese origins were victims of activities carried out by the alleged police stations. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau briefly chatted with reporters on Parliament Hill on Thursday, responding to a report which said Canada rejected a visa for a Chinese diplomat late last year due to foreign interference concerns.
We are always watching very carefully to make sure that people coming to Canada, even diplomats, are following the rules and are coming for the stated purposes. We will continue to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep Canadians safe. This is an issue we've always taken seriously, including regarding diplomats.
Canada's National Defence Minister Anita Anand opened a 2-day conference in Ottawa focused on our country's security and defence. The annual event brings together industry leaders and defence experts to address topics that help shape the sector. Minister Anand says while Canada continues to support Ukraine in its war with Russia, we must not take our eyes off of China.
China is an increasingly disruptive global power. It increasingly disregards international rules and norms, and it is making large-scale investments to establish its military capabilities. And as China continues to militarize that region, it is also challenging navigation and overflight rights, and it has engaged in coercive diplomacy. Canada must and will unapologetically defend our national interests, as we outlined in our Indo-Pacific strategy. In order to respond to global challenges like these and to protect Canadian interests both at home and abroad, we must build a Canadian armed forces ready for tomorrow.
Minister Anand added that it's very important to support our troops in Latvia and other parts of Europe, so Canada will be fast-tracking the purchase of anti-tank, anti-aircraft, and anti-drone weapons. The heads of the U.S. intelligence community say China wants to de-escalate tensions with the United States and try to create more of a stable, working relationship with Washington.
The People's Republic of China, which is increasingly challenging the United States economically, technologically, politically, and militarily around the world, remains our unparalleled priority. We assess that Beijing still believes it benefits most by preventing a spiraling of tensions and by preserving stability in its relationship with the United States. And specifically, Beijing wants to preserve stability in East Asia, avoid triggering additional economic punishments from U.S. sanctions and U.S. partners, and showcase a steady relationship with the United States to help avoid setbacks in its other relationships around the world, even while signaling opposition to claimed U.S. provocations, including the shoot-down of the PRC balloon.
Well, it was quite cool once again today in many parts of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early look at the forecast. Jeanette, it appears as though we may be seeing a little more cold and snow before things start to warm up.
Well, Environment Canada has issued a weather statement that could result in 10 to 20 centimeters of snowfall beginning Friday into Saturday. Now, that's beginning near the Canada-U.S. border. It's going to be spreading northward. The heaviest snowfall being along the Trans-Canada Highway between Calgary and that Alberta-Saskatchewan border. Also, reduced visibility because of the 60K wind, so travel not necessarily advisable into Friday night. As we look at Lethbridge, we are seeing 5 to 10 centimeters of snowfall and only a 20K wind, so not as bad here. I will be back later in the show to give you a peek at that weekend forecast. Hal?
Thanks so much, Jeanette. I'll keep that shoveled really close by. Veteran Liberal MP Mark Garneau announced that he is retiring from politics. He'll be stepping aside as a member of Parliament from the Notre Dame de Grâce Westmount riding in Quebec. He says this is the end of his professional career and he's looking forward to retirement.
I'm not looking at going to another job at the moment. When I left the Navy, I went to become an astronaut. When I left the Canadian Space Agency, I went to become a politician. So now I'm not going towards something. I've climbed all my mountains, and I'm very happy with that, and I want to spend my time with my family.
The federal government says it is investing millions of dollars into a charity to support mental health programs for our youth. The money will be going to jack.org. Federal Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Carolyn Bennett, made the announcement.
I'm proud to announce that the Government of Canada is providing $2.7 million to jack.org to help them scale up and adapt two of their amazing mental health programs for youth, Jack Talks and Be There. Both of these programs empower youth with the skills they need to navigate their own mental health struggles, but also to help others who are struggling.
The Alberta government says it is offering more support for those who've been impacted by the devastating earthquakes that hit both Turkey and Syria. Officials say they will match donations made by Albertans and provincial organizations to the Canadian Red Cross up to a total of $1 million. Funding will go toward humanitarian aid, helping families to rebuild. When earthquakes struck Turkey and Syria on February 6th, around 50,000 people were killed and millions of others were left homeless. The Alberta government says more than 600 affordable housing units will be coming, which will target Albertans in need. Around $54 million will be allocated towards supporting 17 projects in 9 communities across the province. Much of the money will be going towards initiatives in both Calgary and Edmonton, but there's also funding for our rural regions.
Part of our strategy is to make sure that we're building out affordable housing, senior lodges in some of our more rural and remote communities as well, and to make sure that people can live in the community that they raise their families in, that they built their lives in. We think that's critical for our seniors and provide that dignity. So we are, I've been traveling the province, meeting with a number of different municipalities. There are a number of projects in our more rural and remote communities as well that we will be funding as we go forward.
The Green Acres Foundation in Lethbridge will be receiving around $595,000 from this affordable housing initiative. Staff explain what the money will be going towards.
The money is going to be used for the capital for this project. This project, we had purchased a former convent, so it's got some historical value too to Lethbridge because it was originally built in 1949, and now we're converting it into affordable seniors apartments. And then we're also adding on a second phase. So when it's all done next year, it'll be 25 apartments for seniors, which will be well needed in Lethbridge.
The province also announced that it has introduced legislation to cut more red tape. Minister of Red Tape Reduction, Dale Nally, says Bill 9 will help make life easier for hardworking Albertans and business owners.
With this bill, we are continuing to make important legislative changes to support investment and economic growth, reduce unnecessary regulation, and improve the way we deliver services to Albertans. As of this month, we've cut red tape by nearly 30% and saved Albertans and Alberta businesses at least $2.1 billion since 2019. This demonstrated success and our commitment to the red tape reduction priority has allowed Alberta to continue to be recognized as a top performer. Recently, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business gave Alberta an overall grade of A- in its 2023 Red Tape Report Card. While this placed Alberta first overall in Canada and the only A, we know there continues to be more work that has to be done.
Alberta NDP energy critic Kathleen Ganley is demanding that the UCP not give out $20 billion taxpayer dollars to friends of Premier Daniel Smith. Ganley is making reference to the funding the energy sector could receive to clean up old abandoned wells, something Ganley says should be paid for by the oil and gas companies and not Alberta taxpayers.
Danielle Smith herself lobbied for this royalty giveaway before she became Premier. She advocated for it during the UCP leadership contest. She swapped out a UCP energy minister who opposed it for a vocal proponent and continues to list it as a key strategy in her budget released last week. What the budget does not include is any information on cost, expected benefits, outcomes to be tracked or measured, or any other information. Because then the UCP would be forced to answer questions. Questions about how the program works and who stands to benefit most.
Alberta Party leader Barry Morishita was in Lethbridge on Thursday presenting an alternative to the UCP and NDP. The party describes itself as financially responsible but socially progressive. Morishita spoke about what his party is offering compared to the two big dogs here in our province.
I think when it comes to things like affordable housing and the things we seem to talk about every election time, doctor recruitment, we talk it, but when have there actually been targeted and innovative investments made? You know, the last two governments have taken billion-dollar flyers on oil train tankers, on the Keystone XL, $1 billion plus each or more. We can't take any kind of risk, it seems like, when it comes to people. Why aren't we investing billions into social causes? Why aren't we making those investments for people? That's what government's here, and I think that's the difference. We're going to make decisions that affect people first.
The provincial election is coming up on May 29th. Now, according to Abacus data, the Alberta Party only has about 5% of the vote right now. The UCP and NDP, meanwhile, are neck and neck with 35% support among voters. 22% are still undecided. Drone safety was discussed at the Lethbridge Community Safety SBC on Thursday afternoon. A submission from a community member asked the city to implement more measures to prohibit the use of micro-drones that weigh less than 250 grams. City staff says it's not up to them to manage complaints of drones. They also said the safety of the city is not in question, and they delegate drone complaints over to Transport Canada. Staff with the city explained what many of the drones are used for.
There's commercial things that are exploding. I mean, real estate agents are using these, and a whole bunch of other different businesses, and the city actually uses some of these.
Your entertainment business
Entertainment.
too.
Oh yeah, we just had a discussion, a workshop with the movie production, and they're talking about how much they use these drones or whatever. I think it's more of a hobby for individuals. I think they get some fun out of it. Whenever you do something like this, people can misuse these things, but there are a lot of controls in the product when you purchase it itself. And there are a lot of regulations. There's actually a complaint form online with Transport Canada. You can go in and completely fill out that and get them to investigate.
The Community Safety SBC recommended that City Council receive the report as information. You know, this is the time of year many Canadians want to escape the cold weather and travel somewhere warmer. Travel advisors, however, are in place for some tropical destinations. The Canadian government says it's best to use a high degree of caution when traveling to Mexico, Jamaica, and the Dominican Republic. A travel expert with AMA Travel says many countries, however, have these advisories attached to them year-round.
It may not necessarily affect the actual country, but it might just be maybe a certain area out of some capital cities, some other areas. So you have to really see what the advisory is and really the exact pinpoint where it is. But I think at the end of the day, I think what most people need to understand is that if you go on vacation, you just want to play it safe, no different than what you would be doing back here, right? You know, we don't want to be staying out late at night or get into areas that are dark, anything along that line.
Van Muir says when the advisory reaches a level 3, it's best to avoid all travel to that country altogether. A lot of Albertans have been talking about the TV series The Last of Us, and why not? Many of the scenes were shot right here in our province. Some of the show was even filmed at Waterton Lakes National Park. Shamir Suleiman is the president of the Waterton Park Chamber, and he said, you know, it was pretty cool when producers asked to shoot at his hotel, the Bayshore Inn in Waterton. Suleiman said he didn't realize how big of a deal The Last of Us really was.
You know, when they first approached us, we didn't realize how big a show it was going to be. We often have commercials and movies and documentaries shot in Waterton, and we don't think too much of it. So I didn't realize how big this show was actually going to be. It's huge, of course, and when they came in, they took over the entire hotel. It was really exciting to see that opening shot of Waterton in the winter, because I love Waterton in the winter. It's an amazing getaway. And to see the front of the Bayshore and how they took all the signs out, of course, put their own spin on the front of the hotel, and they used other buildings in the park. It was just exciting to see our little slice of heaven on the big screen.
Yes, Waterton in the winter is beautiful. Make sure you catch the full interview with Waterton Park Chamber President Shamir Suleiman and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up in the second half of our program. The red carpet is set to be rolled out for the 9th annual Lethbridge Oscar Party fundraiser. The event will raise money for the yet-to-be-completed Chinook Child and Youth Advocacy Centre in Lethbridge. Oscar goers will sit and watch the event on the big screen while enjoying drinks, dressing up, and playing games during the festivities. One of the organizers explained whom they're hoping for will win Best Actor this year.
A lot of people think it's going to be Austin Butler for Elvis. And it could be, if I pick my favorites, it would be Brandon Fraser for Best Actor for The Whale, but he could also win. That's one of the toughest categories this year. There's not sure locks like last year. I would say there was a lot more. It's fun in a whole wide group of people all dressed up and having our cocktails, and all of a sudden Will Smith comes up and slaps a comedian, and we're just like, well, that just happened. And it's sure you can watch it on your TV, but it's so much more enjoyable to do it in this environment.
The event will take place March 12th at Pure Casino Lethbridge in the social room. Oscars host Jimmy Kimmel says no blood will be shed at the ceremony as he joined workers in Hollywood for the ceremonial rolling out of this year's champagne-colored carpet for the Academy Awards.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you guys for asking me to do this. I'm thrilled, I'm honored, I'm excited. Mostly about the carpet. I mean, this carpet is so beautiful. Wait, it's a remnant. We got it for a very good price downtown. So people have been asking, is there going to be any trouble this year? Is there going to be any violence this year? And we certainly hope not. But if there is, I think the decision to go with a champagne carpet rather than a red carpet shows how confident we are that no blood will be shed. Look at how beautifully they're rolling out that carpet. This is the kind of thing you only see in Hollywood and every model home in America.
By the way, Oscar time is always a fun time. Well, it was another good day for wearing those snow boots and parkas here in southwestern Alberta. The cooler temperatures will remain with us for a while longer, however. Complete weather details are on deck. Well, it was cold again today in Lethbridge, but fortunately a warming trend is on the way, but sadly, not until next week. Jeanette Roche is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, will we see plus temperatures again anytime soon?
Well, not this weekend, that's for sure, Hal. We do have that Environment Canada issuing a weather statement. Beginning Friday into Saturday, we're looking at quite a bit of snowfall in the southern Alberta region. As for Lethbridge, so we're looking at 5 to 10 centimeters on Friday. That's still lots. Minus 10 is the high and only a 20K wind. Not so bad. Into Saturday, we are still seeing that minus 9 there with a mix of sun and cloud, and then sunshine on Sunday. It is starting to warm up. Look at that, minus 5. And then there we have those pluses, not until next week. So we're looking at Monday and Tuesdays, high of 8 and a high of 7 degrees on Wednesday. So that will feel good, especially after this chilly weekend. Average high for this time of year, 5 degrees. Average low, minus 8, 20 degrees. That was our high temperature on this day, if you can believe that, back in 2004. And then look at that, just 2 years earlier, we had the chilliest. That was a record breaker for sure, minus 34. This morning, 6:58, that's when the sun rose. Sunset this evening at 6:25. So we're now in the 6 o'clock hour when the sun is peeking out beyond the horizon in the morning. So 11 hours and 24 minutes of daylight. We're getting there, that's for sure. 60% chance of showers in Victoria tomorrow, 8 degrees the high there. Vancouver looking at afternoon showers as well, and then a mix of sun and cloud later in the day. Minus 7 the high in Edmonton. Edmonton seeing some light periods of snow. Minus 11 for a high in Calgary. Calgary seeing 2 to 4 centimeters of snow tomorrow, and that's not to mention the 10 to 20 centimeters that is expected along the Trans-Canada corridor up to the Saskatchewan border. Okay, speaking of Saskatchewan, minus 7 the high in Saskatoon tomorrow, looking at a 30% chance of flurries. Minus 7 in Regina. Regina seeing 60% chance of flurries later in the day. Now there's a low pressure system developing in Montana that's going to be pushing snow into southern Saskatchewan. So Regina, that area could get a lot of snowfall by the weekend. Minus 2 the high in Winnipeg. Winnipeg looking at a mix of sun and cloud, not too much snow there, so they're doing all right. Over in the central part of the country, Toronto looking at 5 centimeters of snow. Minus 2 the high there, 0 the high in Ottawa. Ottawa looking at mainly cloudy skies and mainly cloudy skies as well, expected in Montreal tomorrow with a high of 0 degrees. A little bit of precipitation on the east coast. We're looking at 3 degrees the high in Fredericton, a 30% chance of flurries in Halifax, high of 2 degrees, 0 the high in Charlottetown, also looking at 30% chance of flurries there, and also a 0 in St. John's, Newfoundland. Looking at a chance of flurries before heavier snowfall. They could be expecting 10 to 20 centimeters by Friday night and into Saturday. So lots going on there as well. There you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather report is brought to you by Ridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet, while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
U.S. auto safety regulators have opened an investigation into Tesla's Model Y SUV after receiving complaints that the steering wheels can come off while being driven. Government officials say the probe covers around 120,000 vehicles from the 2023 model year. The agency says that in both cases, the Model Ys were delivered to customers with a missing bolt that holds the wheel to the steering column. A friction fit held the steering wheels on, but they separated when force was applied. Maple Leaf Foods is reporting a loss of $41.5 million in its fourth quarter due to weaker pork markets and a cyber attack. The company had a profit of $1.9 million a year earlier. Officials say the quarter included a $23 million hit related to a cybersecurity incident in November and $25.8 million in startup expenses related to construction projects. It says the underlying health of the business is solid despite the unprecedented challenges, and it is raising its quarterly dividend from 20 to 21 cents per share. There's a Canadian company that turns garbage into fuel. Now, when we say fuel, we mean things like diesel and kerosene. Ryan Jackson is the CEO of Cielo Waste Management. He says creating a fuel is a great byproduct of what they do, but their main focus is helping so many industries get rid of their garbage.
Our purpose is essentially to solve or to be a waste solutions company to allow people to come to us with their waste problem. CP Rail is a good example with their railroad ties, which we've publicly announced, and say, help. How can you do something with this that doesn't have us take it to a landfill or burn them, whatever it is. And so we have a process called thermocatalytic depolymerization, and I have practiced that more than once, TCD, and our process and technology allows us to convert certain types of waste into a fuel.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Ryan Jackson from Cielo Waste Management and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up after Business News. Now here's a look at today's markets, which took a bit of a beating today. The TSX was down 246 points on the day to finish at 20,099. The Dow was down 567 points to 32,230. The S&P 500 was down 81 on the day to 3910. And the Nasdaq was down 243 points to 11,332. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $1.10 to $75.56 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 6 cents to $2.49 US. Gold was up $17.17 on the day to $18.30.97 US an ounce, and silver was even at $20.03 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.70 per bushel, barley's at $9.08, canola's at $17.98, and corn is at $10.77 per bushel. Live cattle April contract was down 65 cents to $164.80. Feeder cattle March contract was down 68 cents to $193.08. And lean hogs April contract was down 68 cents to $85.08. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 72.28 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the RCMP is investigating 2 alleged secret police stations operated by Chinese authorities in Quebec. Police say its integrated national security team has opened investigations into the suspected stations located in Montreal and its suburb of Brossard. Officials say Mounties are carrying out actions aimed at detecting and disrupting what they say are foreign state criminal activities. The RCMP say that Canadians of Chinese origins were victims of activities carried out by the alleged police stations. Many people are still talking about the TV series The Last of Us, which was shot right here in Alberta. Coming up, we chat with the president of the Waterton Park Chamber of Commerce, who talks about how certain scenes were filmed at his hotel right in Waterton. If you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Well, Well, the Government of Canada recently announced a $17.8 million in funding for 50 organizations in Alberta to enhance and create new tourism experiences, events, and attractions. Among the 50 organizations receiving funding, 4 are in southern Alberta, including the Waterton Chamber of Commerce, which will be receiving just shy of $100,000 to create an e-commerce strategy and digital toolkit to help its local businesses attract visitors year-round. So to discuss the developments in Waterton Lakes National Park, I'm going to bring in Shamir Suleiman of he's actually the president of the Waterton Chamber of Commerce. Shamir, welcome back to Bridge City News. Great to have you on once again.
Great to have you with me today.
Okay, so before we get into the recent funding for the Village of Waterton, okay, I got to ask you about the huge HBO series, The Last of Us. So the most recent episode, I believe, was shot in Waterton, right there at the Bayshore Inn, which you own as well, right, Shamir?
Yeah.
So maybe,
yeah, it was really exciting.
Yeah, talk about having this episode shot in your community and in your hotel. What was it like?
You know, when they first approached us, we didn't realize how big a show it was going to be. We often have commercials and movies and documentaries shot in Waterton, and we don't think too much of it. So I didn't realize how big this show was actually going to be. It's huge, of course, and when they came in, they took over the entire hotel. It was really exciting to see that opening shot of Waterton in the winter, because I love Waterton in the winter. It's an amazing getaway. And to see the front of the Bayshore and how they took all the signs out, of course, put their own spin on the front of the hotel, and they used other buildings in the park. It was just exciting to see our little slice of heaven on the big screen. So it was really quite exciting. And we've had phone calls all day kind of in the hotel saying, oh, that was the Bayshore. We love it down there. We love Waterton, so on and so forth. So it's been really exciting for us.
That's so neat. Okay, so you're saying that they changed the signage. Did they do that in CG, or did they actually come in and do stuff physically?
No, they were there for about 3 days before.
Wow.
They actually put down fake snow, and then it snowed 1.5 feet on top of poor guys. It snowed on top of that.
Yeah,
but they
you
took
don't
all
have
of
to
our
do that
signage
there.
off.
You don't have to put down the fake snow, do you?
But they took all the signage off. They put all their own signage up. They built all those sets. They built all that, everything you see inside. They built all that. So it was quite neat to see how the movies were made and how they were able to, what we see them shoot and what the final product was. How amazing it actually was.
Yeah, that's really cool. You said that they approached you. How did they even hear about the Bayshore? Had they been there kind of location scouting already?
Yeah, I think there's location scouts kind of all over Alberta, and they've shot so many other movies and TV shows that you may not know, and I may not know, because a lot of them are foreign films. So we've had 3 or 4 foreign films shot there. So location scouts know about us anyways, and if we kind of turn up, and there's nothing more perfect than an abandoned town in the middle of winter. Well, Waterton's the one, right? So it kind of worked perfect for them.
Very, very, very cool. So happy for you there. Okay, switching gears here, let's talk about the park itself and the actual town site. How many visitors does Waterton see in a year?
So we see about 550,000-ish on average a season. So quite busy for our small little area.
Okay, so your community has done very well with advertising and advocating for people to visit the town site. So where do you find the bulk of your travelers are visiting from?
So now we've kind of rerouted back away from COVID. We're kind of getting back to normal now. So we're getting back to our American visitors. We're getting back to our international travelers. The Canadian market is still there, but typically speaking in the summer, for the hotels anyways, the good chunk of our business, almost 70% would be Americans and international travel. So that's kind of come back now. We're still waiting for the Chief Mountain Border Crossing to open this summer. It's been closed since the beginning of COVID, but we're hoping that will open this year. But that's where the bulk of our business comes from, and our visitation comes from. But just to give you an idea, we see 500,000, but right across the border in Glacier National Park, they see 6 million.
Right.
Just a little piece of that comes up and sees in my opinion, the prettier part of Waterton Glacier International Peace Park.
They're both absolutely gorgeous parks,
They are.
100%. Okay, so we started this segment talking about the funding. Maybe let's talk about that. How did it come about? What was the process like? And how is it going to be useful for Waterton?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's huge. I mean, we were made aware by Travel Alberta. They're the ones that kind of told us, hey, this is available through Prairies Can, and you should apply for it. And so we went on a limb, we applied for it. Now, I want to be very specific. This money can't be used for day-to-day marketing. So what we do as a chamber, we can't replace that money with that. It's got to be sort of something, a project to enhance rural areas. So for us, we can't compete with the big budgets of Banff, Jasper, Lake Louise. We can't compete with those big budgets. Even on a digital sort of scale, I'm sure their budgets are 20, 30, 40 times the size of ours. So what it did was it did help us enhance our website. We are now just about finished uploading our 360 tours. So now guests can actually physically watch somebody walk the hikes, the views, and see those scenic things that some of them can't go on. And some of them want to see, hey, we're coming down there. What is Waterton all about? Where now you can actually walk these hikes and take 360 views from the top of Bears Hump and some of the other big hikes, landmarks, and that will be now on our site. So it'll be very interactive. So that's where the bulk of the money is aimed at, as well as shooting. I mean, just to shoot all that and have videographers and photographers come down, half the budget just went to that. Because, it's something we could never afford on our small shoestring kind of marketing budget that Waterton has. But this was a big jump for us and a big help to enhance our website, to show visitors what we actually have to offer, and not just pictures. It's very interactive, which is huge for us. And then the e-commerce aspect, hopefully we'll have enough left over to be able to help our community with e-commerce as well.
Yeah, that's really exciting, that website, because, I mean, some of those hikes are absolutely incredible. And you're right, they're not necessarily accessible to everybody. I think the Crypt Lake hike is, 5 to 7 hours long or something? Exactly. I've done that one a couple times, and it's certainly one of my favorites. I think it made, one of the top 10 hikes in Canada, something like that.
In North America, yeah.
North America. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's
so yeah, if you can put stuff like on there that's going to attract even more visitors there. I think a lot of people don't know about Waterton Lakes National Park. It's one of the smallest national parks, isn't it? At least in Alberta, for sure.
It is, and it's the first international peace park ever. So it's a big deal. And the one positive COVID was able to do for us is showcase Waterton to locals and to Albertans that had seen the picture but never actually ventured down. And once they did, we kind of heard, wow, what an amazing area that we had seen pictures of but never knew where it was, never heard of it, and didn't realize how amazing it was down here. So it was able to shine a light on us in Alberta locally. And then, of course, Travel Alberta has always partnered with us to help us market all over North America and Europe and abroad to maybe make a bigger destination out of the national parks in Alberta.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the funding part of it going to e-commerce. So is this funding available to all the businesses in the community?
Yeah, so the chamber is basically represents every business. So every business in Waterton is automatically a member of the Chamber of Commerce. So absolutely everybody benefits. Everybody gets access to all the images, all the video footage to be able to enhance their own websites and their own social media. So it kind of is a big trickle on something that we could never afford as a chamber, or each one of these individuals couldn't afford to bring in videographers with drones and so on and so forth. We just don't have the budget and could never afford to do that. We can afford to maintain the marketing that we do with the small budget that we have, with the help from the ID Council and Travel Alberta. So, that's sort of our ongoing funding. But this was a big boost for us, enabling us to enhance our website and really show off what Waterton is really all about.
Definitely. The Waterton Guide is always an interesting read. What can you tell us about the theme for the guide this year?
So this year's guide is, last year was all about we're back, we're open, rejuvenated. Now a lot of the park, almost 90%, there's just one little Crandall campground that Parks Canada we're giving them a little nudge to get that Crandall campground done. But other than that, everything's ready, everything's open, post-fire, post-COVID, everything's sort of up and ready to go. And for us, it's about rebirth, rejuvenation, and really showing off all that Waterton has to offer, all the hikes, all the bikes, all the biking, golfing. Our golf course has undergone a huge transformation with new ownership. Our stables were just rebuilt after the fire. That's brand new. So it's kind of that year where we're all ready, where everything's new, everything's ready to go. It's kind of like a rebirth would be that. And our always our focus on the side, and that leads us is how we're all family-owned and operated businesses. That's a big thing for us. My family has owned it we're on our third generation. There's families that have been there for 100 years. Just like I always say, every business for us is known by the business owner. Every cabin has the family name on it. It's a very family-owned and operated atmosphere, and that's what we always play up on is come visit us. It's a different sense of pride for us.
Absolutely. And you're right that Waterton has been hit with so many challenges lately between the fires and then, of course, COVID happened. And then it is a very seasonal place as well. With it still being winter and feeling like winter right now, can you tell us what Waterton is like this time of year? I've traveled there in the wintertime, and it's pretty much a ghost town for the most part. But it's a good one. It's a good ghost town.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful
so
one.
I know I'm different, but that's my favorite time. It's almost like, number one, you get the park to yourself. So there's no crowds. You can snowshoe, cross-country ski. Waterton's Chinooks. You can bike. You can hike. There's a lot to do. You really get it to yourself. There's 2 lodges open, the Waterton Glacier Suites and the Red Rock Trattoria, amazing Italian food. And then there's the, of course, rebuilt Kilmorey Lodge, which just reopened after it burned down several years ago. It just reopened in September. They have their restaurant, the Kilmorey Bar and Grill is in there, and they're open year-round now. So with those 2 properties that are really cute, quaint, newer properties, I think dining has a very different atmosphere. And it's a great time to visit, especially when it's snowy and when the weather starts to get a little better. I just think it's a fantastic time. If you want to avoid all the big crowds and kind of be able to walk those streets, on your own, see Cameron Falls, see that lake, at this time of the year, it's just awesome.
Yeah, and then of course spring right around the corner. So what are some tips that you have for tourists to see as winter ends and spring sort of begins?
That's a fun time. That's a really fun time because there's a lot of great hikes that start to thaw out, start to open up. Biking, I really think at this time of year, because the snow kind of comes and goes in our area, biking is an amazing thing at this time of the year. Those are the 2 kind of things that I enjoy the most. There's still a lot of snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. If you can get yourself up to Cameron Lake, oh my God, that's amazing at this time of the year. So those are the things that I would kind of push you towards. And then once all the businesses open up in May, that's a really fun time. That's when all the deals are to be had. So I always tell everyone, you want to visit Waterton? May, June, there's all sorts of deals at every hotel, every restaurant. Of course, don't forget the food festival. Everyone should mark that on their calendar. Last weekend of May. Okay. A lot of fun stuff for that as well.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Absolutely. Do leaseholders sort of see Waterton as the winter more or less is the season for opportunity for them?
That's the time that they like to go down. They like to get in their cabins. They like to, just
in there with a fire.
Yeah. Got the fire going. They're able to kind of snuggle in, able to see the animals just waking up. You're able to just kind of have the park to yourself without any tourists walking around and kind of asking you tourist questions. It's that time.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I just think that any time of the year, I mean, it's gorgeous. You got the Rocky Mountains covered in snow. That's beautiful. And then, of course, summertime is so much fun there with the lake open up and you can go paddleboarding and kayaking. And I, of course, love to get out there and do that as well. But Shamir, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Shamir Suleiman is the president of Waterton Chamber of Commerce and the owner of Bayshore Inn. Alternate fuels have been the quest and subject of many discussions for a long time, but how about alternative sources for traditional fuels? For example, imagine if you could turn your trash and plastic waste into fuel for your car. Well, it is a concept that's actually being developed currently here in Alberta through a company called Cielo Waste Solutions, and their CEO, Ryan Jackson, joins me from Calgary to talk about these innovations. Ryan, welcome to Bridge City News. Great to have you on today.
Thanks, Jeanette. Glad to be here.
Great. Okay, so Ryan, tell us more about this. I went onto your website and I watched the video. It's very fascinating, and you're actually finding different ways to think about garbage, is what it sounds like. So maybe tell us about the company's mission.
Well, you know what? It's so I'd like to think of it more as a purpose, and I only because mission vision is so 90s. It's now time to really talk about what our purpose is, and our purpose is essentially to solve or to be a waste solutions company to allow people to come to us with their waste problem. CP Rail is a good example with their railroad ties, which we've publicly announced, and say, help. How can you do something with this that doesn't have us take it to a landfill or burn them, whatever it is. And so we have a process called thermocatalytic depolymerization, and I have practiced that more than once, TCD, and our process and technology allows us to convert certain types of waste into a fuel.
Fascinating. Okay, so you're basically figuring out how to take waste, turn it into usable fuels for what? For airplanes, for cars, to power our houses, all of the above?
Currently, we do have a way to. So what we do is our process has a stage where we put into the reactor, and along with the wood waste, for example, in the context of railroad ties, and we're going to be trialing other types of rubber and plastics as an example. But it goes in with a carrier fluid and a catalyst, and out the back of it comes a distillate, which then can be refined into diesel, jet fuel, and then a byproduct of it is naphtha, which is a diluent for pipelines and whatnot. So that, along with other compounds, we can also create with different types of feedstock as well, potentially as an additive in a chemical processing plant or anything of that nature.
Okay, so what kinds of wastes are we talking about that can be used? You mentioned the railroad ties. Can we use like any household trash, literally, that's going to the landfill?
We have the ability to process specific waste currently. And so the broader term of garbage, for example, it doesn't go into a blender and out comes some magic fuel. It's a little bit more complicated than that for us. So right now, we're sorting through the specific waste streams that we're able to process efficiently. Obviously, the one that gets the most attention is the plastics, mostly. And it's interesting because there's a lot of talk around plastics, but at the same time, a consistent, viable feedstock with respect to plastics is something that's a little bit more elusive in Canada than it is in other jurisdictions.
When you say feedstock, what exactly do you mean by that?
So waste. So basically, our feedstock is the waste that we refer to.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so how is this for the environment? How clean is this process?
So all of the process that we have is a closed loop. So what we get in the way of I guess, an off waste stream, we reintroduce into our process. So we do utilize, I paraphrase always, a meat processing facility where there's very little waste once they're through with everything. And that's essentially what our approaches as well. So from an emissions perspective, we incinerate what little waste gas there is off of the process, and our waste stream is essentially reintroduced back into the process to try and maximize efficiency. So we're in the single digits as far as our waste stream that comes off of the process.
Okay, how did this technology come to be? What was the motivating factor to develop this? It's quite interesting.
It was acquired from Germany, actually, back close to 10 years ago, and brought over to this country. And of course, innovation in and of itself is created around people who take a good idea or a good initial process and create something good from it. And that's essentially what has happened here, is that the core technology or process that was brought over, along with the catalyst and things of that nature, that then evolved into what we have today.
Okay. Is this the first of this kind? You mentioned Germany. Is this the first of this kind in Canada? Are there other sort of companies developing this that you know of?
Our process is unique. So TCD, I'm not going to have to say it again, but TCD is essentially what we've been able to discern is that there's no other company using this type of approach. There are other people out there using a biofuel approach where it's Fischer-Tropsch and it's a gasification play or pyrolysis. There is heat involved in our process, and we do have to still crack, to use a chemical term. I'm a business guy, so that's about as far as you'll get from me. But it's unique in that perspective. There's some similarities in parts of our process, but TCD is unique for Cielo.
That's interesting. Okay, so you're in Calgary, but you have a new facility, I believe, in Aldersyde, Alberta? Okay.
We've had that facility for the better part of since 2018, actually.
Okay, wow.
It was an old biofuels plant that actually was mothballed. It was a failed Government of Alberta project to turn animal tallow from the neighboring meat processing facility near High River into biodiesel, and notwithstanding the failure, out of it came the opportunity for our founder and CEO at the time to buy it out of mothballs and utilize the facility and its infrastructure.
That's incredible. Okay, so how long does a project like this take to go from concept to market? It's still in the development stage, I believe, right?
We've proven the concept, so it's not a matter of us understanding if it works. We know it works. The biggest part now is actually the commercialization efforts that we're undertaking through additional data that we're going to be receiving from our Aldersyde facility. So that in and of itself will allow us to then build our first full-scale facility to take care of the railroad tie problem that CP Rail has.
Okay, so then from concept to finished product, how long could that take? I mean, you've had the Aldersyde one, the facility there for 5 years. This has been in development. So how long before this gets pushed out to market, do you think?
We've publicly stated in the press releases that we've done that we have an expectation that we'll be commissioning a facility in 2025.
Okay, wow, that's actually not that long from now. No.
Yeah.
Okay, so how much research and development did this take to get you to this current point where you are now?
A lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And innovation, as I mentioned earlier, it really comes on the back of failure. The more you try, the more you fail, the more you learn. And I think that through the course of the Aldersyde experiment and project, and it was successful in allowing us to get to proof of concept. And once we got to that point, we had to actually take a step back and run through what we knew to be true and build the current skid or the current facility as we know it today. And we're going to be commissioning that facility this month. And that is the, I don't want to say the finished product, but that is the nexus, if you will, of what we ended up achieving, which is the learnings from the Aldersyde since the beginning, and also, of course, the initial concept that we brought over from Germany.
Okay. Well, you talked about obviously trial and error and success and failure. So maybe talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've faced or are currently facing.
Yeah, I mean, we've run into, and I mean, it's really about understanding the interaction. And again, now I'm going down into what I've only been told by the folks that obviously do this kind of work, because I'm just a business guy. But we've learned a lot about the interaction between the catalyst, our carrier fluid, and the feedstock or the waste that we were talking about earlier. So really perfecting that balance and understanding how it reacts and how it comes into, essentially the distillate or that intermediate product I mentioned as well. It really does take a lot of time perfecting the recipe, if you want to call it that, and understanding that, you're not going to, bake cookies at 600 degrees Fahrenheit if you want them to cook faster. There's a sweet spot that you have to hit. And that's essentially a lot of what had to happen. And then you have plugging issues that you were going to be dealing with because you would create too much of a reaction too quickly, and that would, it would coke things up. So there's a lot of technical, expertise that goes into this. And a lot of it, quite frankly, is art as much as it is science to really understand the perfect balance.
Oh, I can 100% imagine for sure. So Ryan, who do you see using this product in the long run? Is it meant for everyone, or who's your main customer base?
Well, it's interesting because we have actually three main sources of revenue. So the first one is that waste solutions that we provide in the way of receiving a tipping fee for the waste that people bring to us. So I'll reference again CP Rail as an example. And then the other revenue stream that we will quantify a lot more in the future. We don't need to have this to be able to be profitable, but that's the carbon credits that we're going to receive off of the process that we might anticipate. And then the third thing is it's a fuel. So if we produce a marine diesel or a highway diesel or a sustainable aviation fuel, the nice thing about this is that the market is there and it's extremely large. And so a place that we already have a market for our finished product. It's not like guessing with the cannabis sector, for an example. When they legalized cannabis, nobody really knew how big the cannabis market was. We know now it's not as big as we thought it was going to be. But we really actually do know that there is a market for this product, especially a sustainable product, that what we provide into the market is more than adequate to be able to sell and receive revenue for it.
Okay. And how does this product compare with petrochemicals taken out of the ground?
That one, yeah. And when I saw that, so petrochemical uses a non-renewable resource. And again, I'm just the business guy. I can't reiterate that enough. Anybody who has a chemical engineering degree is probably doing one of these. But a petrochemical facility, if you use, for example, if you're using methane or methanol, you're using natural gas as your feedstock, and you're using a lot of heat, and you're using that to crack those molecules into a methanol product. Whereas our process is using a waste material, a catalyst, and the carrier fluid I mentioned earlier. So they're not using a waste stream, we are. That's about all I can tell you.
Right, yeah. Well, it's kind of a win-win. You're taking waste that's going into a landfill or into the ocean, like the plastics, and then you're turning it into something that's actually usable. It's a fascinating concept, absolutely. So you had mentioned 2025, but where do you see this in 5 years?
Well, I mean, from a business perspective, we're looking at the low-hanging fruit, the biggest problem that we can solve with the least amount of effort. And so once we essentially achieve, for example, and realize on the type of waste streams that we can identify that are going to be both solving a big problem for our customer, but also, and as important, it also generates a margin that we can actually say that to our shareholders that we're acting responsibly on both sides of the equation, both with your money and with the environment. I think that the best option is to say we'll have grown to a point where we've solved certain sector problems. Because remember, we're not a fuels producer. That's our byproduct that we produce by taking care of a waste stream. So it's important for us. That's why we're called Cielo Waste Solutions and not Cielo Oil and Gas.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. So we'll continue to develop our technology. We're only in, even though we're at, we'll call it a 10-year overnight success, we really do have a lot more that we can learn. And the first plant we build at commercial scale will tell us a lot. So in 5 years, I'd like to think that we have a lot more of them. And feedstock, though, informs that. The waste stream has to be consistent, and it has to be there. Otherwise, we can't produce. So that's probably the biggest part of this equation, is getting a sustainable, profitable feedstock into our facility.
Okay, yeah, and it sounds like your main customers would be those that produce the most amount of waste on a consistent basis. Yeah,
absolutely. Rubber's a good example too, right? And not to belabor the point, but we all change tires. We all still continue to drive on the road and everything else. The plastics issue in Canada is starting to change. The landscape is changing. They're banning single-use plastics. It's not as easy to find a waste stream for plastics in Canada. But remember, we're a globally focused company, so we're not looking solely at solving a Canadian problem. We're looking at solving a global problem.
And Ryan, we are out of time here, but it's really quick. If people want to know more about this, how can they find out more?
You know what? The best thing, like what you did, is go to cielows.com and take a look, and certainly reach out to investors at cielows.com as well if you have any questions.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for joining us today, Ryan. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Ryan Jackson is the CEO of Cielo Waste Solutions. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.